I've been a judicial officer now for starting my 17th year, and I could objectively say that this is perhaps the most inhumane and vicious crime that I have handled out of the thousands of cases that I have seen. And nothing less than a maximum sentence would be appropriate, and anything less than the maximum sentence would depreciate the seriousness of this offense.
A veteran justice's testimony opened a shocking trial that exposed the horrific tragedy hidden behind a facade of family happiness. On the morning of the 13th of August, 2018, in Frederick, Colorado, a worried friend called 911 after being unable to reach Shanann Watts, a pregnant mother of 2 young daughters. When police arrived at 2825 Saratoga Trail, everything appeared normal. The door was unbroken. The car was in the garage, and the phone and wallet were on the table. But the homeowner had disappeared without a trace.
Friends that Shanann has that maybe I didn't know about, and it's just like it's vanished. Like, she's not, like, when I got home yesterday, it was like a ghost town. Like, she wasn't here, kids weren't here. I have no idea like where they went, and it's just earth-shattering. I don't feel like this is even real right now. It's like a nightmare that I just can't wake up from.
Chris, when did you learn that they weren't here?
Like, well, I texted her a few times and called her. I didn't get a response, which that was a little off. And then her friend Nicole showed up about a little afternoon. I could see it on the doorbell camera, and I was like, "Hey, what's going on?" She's like, "I can't get a hold of Shanann." And that's when I was just like, "All right, something's not right." If she's not answering the door, she said the car was here. It's like, I gotta go home. And we got here, got inside, and nobody was here. Nothing.
When Chris Watts, Shanann's husband, appeared, looking tired, constantly rolling his eyes, his voice shaking as he spoke to the police. He said his wife had left early in the morning after an argument. But there was no message, no sign of a hasty departure. Police quickly discovered irregularities, inconsistent statements, unusual GPS data, and a neighbor's security camera recording Chris's pickup leaving the house in the early hours of the morning. An urgent investigation was launched, revealing every little detail of the Watts family's seemingly peaceful life. What lies behind the calm exterior of a father and a model husband? This is not just a missing person case, it is a door leading to a crime that shocked the whole of America. Join us as we follow the initial traces to uncover the truth behind the Chris Watts case. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next shocking cases. Shanann Watts, 34, is an active woman living in Frederick, Colorado. She is the epitome of a modern woman. She is proactive in her work, shares her family life on social media, and runs an online business from home. Shanann is 15 weeks pregnant with her 3rd child. She lives with her husband, Chris Watts, and their 2 young daughters, Bella, 4, and Celeste, 3, in a typical suburban home surrounded by nice neighbors and a friendly community. To her friends, Shanann is positive, outgoing, and devoted to her family. Her social media posts often show a happy family, with a loving husband and 2 daughters always chattering away with their mother. She is loved by many, not only for her enthusiasm but also for her strength in overcoming personal health issues. Chris Watts, Shanann's husband, 33 years old, worked at Anadarko Oil Company. He had a calm appearance, exemplary lifestyle, no criminal record. In the eyes of neighbors and relatives, Chris was a devoted father, a quiet but responsible husband. He was the last person to see his wife and 2 children alive. However, it was Chris Watts who committed the murder that shocked the whole of America. The relationship between the couple, which seemed strong, had quietly cracked. After a long period of living under financial pressure, emotional turmoil, and extramarital affairs, Chris became the perpetrator of a family massacre, killing his wife and 2 daughters. There was no obvious warning. Not a sound came from the quiet house that night. But the next morning, all 3 were gone. And the man who was once considered a role model, now stood between suspicion and truth. Before the murder, the Watts family was seen as the epitome of middle-class suburban America. Shanann's frequent Facebook posts of photos and videos showed a perfect family life: 2 adorable daughters, a spacious home, and a husband who always appeared with a gentle smile. Shanann made no secret of her pride in her family. She praised Chris as the ideal husband, someone who loved, shared, and was the rock for the family. But behind that facade of stability lies a crumbling reality. The family is facing serious financial difficulties. The couple filed for bankruptcy a few years ago, and despite their efforts to maintain a positive image, the economic pressures are still looming. Shanann is the driving force behind their online business, while Chris works at an oil company, a steady job, but not enough to wipe out their debt. Chris didn't share much. He kept quiet as the turmoil in their marriage grew. The distance between them began to show. Business trips, cold nights, and private messages to another woman all came to light as the case unfolded. The Watts family, once admired by the community as a picture-perfect family, is quietly falling apart. And while Shanann continues to try to hold on to her faith and maintain a happy image, Chris, quiet on the outside, has plans for the unexpected. In June 2018, Shanann took her 2 daughters to her mother's home in North Carolina, while Chris stayed in Colorado alone. This was also the time when he began an affair with Nicole Kessinger, a co-worker at the company. They met regularly, went out to eat, went out, and even shared plans for the future without Shanann or the children. Meanwhile, Shanann still trusted her husband. She texted him every day, called to check in, and sent loving messages. But when she returned to Colorado, she noticed a change. Chris became distant, cold, and avoidant. Even though she was pregnant with their 3rd child, Shanann no longer received any attention from her husband. She started keeping a journal, trying to understand what was going on, and tried to mend the relationship with heartfelt messages and notes, but her efforts fell on deaf ears. July passed in a simmering tension. Shanann began telling friends that Chris wasn't the same person, that she felt lost in her own home. She suggested marriage counseling, but it was not well received. Chris, for his part, maintained the facade of a decent husband. But inside, he had decided the unthinkable. When Shanann went on a business trip to Arizona in early August, Chris took the time to see his mistress, and at the same time planned to erase his past completely. In the early morning hours of the 13th of August, 2018, at 1:48 a.m., a neighbor's security camera captured the last image of Shanann Watts. She walked through the door of her home after a business trip to Arizona, not knowing that it would be the last moment of her life. A few hours later, in the upstairs bedroom, an argument broke out. Shanann asked to talk, and Chris, already intent on his own, lost his temper. In a cold moment, he strangled his wife on the bed. No knife, no gun, just his bare hands, and the intent to kill was already there. Shanann had no chance to fight back. When it was all over, Chris wrapped his wife's body in a sheet. He dragged her body downstairs and loaded it into the back of the pickup truck parked in front of the garage. Meanwhile, his 2 young daughters, Bella and Celeste, suddenly woke up. They had no idea what was happening, only that their mother was lying quietly in the car, wrapped in cloth. Chris didn't stop. He put the 2 children in the back seat and drove more than 40 miles to the oil field where he worked. It was an empty lot, far from residential areas, with no witnesses. There, he took turns attacking his own 2 children. According to testimony, one of the children, Bella, cried and begged, "Don't do this to me." but Chris continued. Shanann's body was dumped in a shallow pit. For Bella and Celeste, he dropped them into separate oil drums, each 20 feet high and filled with industrial fluid. That was where the tragedy ended, a family destroyed in a matter of hours by a father and husband, for the sake of a hopeless, selfish love. Around noon on the 13th of August, 2018, a close friend of Shanann's who also worked in the sales system became concerned when Shanann failed to show up for her scheduled prenatal appointment and completely failed to respond to text messages or calls. Sensing something was wrong, she immediately called the local police to check out Shanann's home. When they arrived, they knocked on the door but no one answered. From the outside, everything looked normal, with no signs of forced entry or struggle.
So, if you're good with that, we'll have you sign a consent form allowing us to search your house, and we'll wait for our sergeant to get here. But we'll grab that. You don't plan on going anywhere, right?
No, I was just going to walk around the neighborhood just to clear my head.
Which company do you work for?
Anadarko.
Anadarko. What do you do for them?
Operator.
So you work like 7 days a week?
5 and 2, like Monday through Friday. I'm doing 8 and 6 next month.
Okay. So today is Monday?
Yes. Yeah.
Alright, let us grab that form, and then
Okay.
we'll wait for our supervisor, and then you can either stay here or you can go walk the neighborhood, whatever you'd like, but we can look through it. Alright, let's go grab that form. We'll be right back with you, okay?
You can stay here?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
The police were allowed into the home with the consent of Chris's family and her who was still feigning ignorance. Inside, they found Shanann's car still parked in the garage. Her purse, phone, shoes, keys all were in their usual places in the house.
I'm still recording stuff. Yeah.
Do this.
Which one is that?
I think that is his. One over took hers. That's wrong.
Is that a diary or what is that?
It's for work, I believe. I was thinking it's possibly diary, but it's talking about. I don't know. Kids need medication too, and apparently she didn't take their medication either.
Celeste, this is all the medication. Is Celeste the kid?
Mm-hmm.
That's albuterol for a nebulizer. Something for an inhaler.
There was no suitcase, no sign that she had left willingly. The house was eerily quiet, and it was that quiet that quickly led the police to shift the case from a routine missing person case to a criminal investigation. When police arrived at the scene on the afternoon of the 13th of August, they found no signs of forced entry or disturbance at the Watts home. There were no broken doors, no broken furniture, and no blood or obvious signs of a struggle. But it was the orderliness and eerie silence that alerted investigators. All of Shanann's essentials were their wallet, phone, keys, shoes. No clothes or personal items had been taken. The house seemed frozen in the middle of an unusual morning. A key detail was later discovered by a neighbor's security camera. At around 5 a.m., Chris Watts quietly backed his pickup truck up to the garage door, an action that, according to the neighbor, had never happened before. It was this image that made the police suspect that Chris was not simply a victim, but could be at the center of all the mysteries unfolding in this quiet house. On the 13th of August, after finding no trace of Shanann and her 2 children leaving the house, police began to consider Chris Watts as the last person they had contact with. He was invited to the station to assist in the investigation. During the initial interviews, Chris appeared cooperative and calm. He repeatedly insisted that he had no idea what had happened, that his wife might have left him because of stress. However, his calm demeanor and inconsistent statements gradually aroused the investigators' suspicions. When asked to take a polygraph test, Chris agreed, but the results showed that he had been lying. Inconsistencies began to appear in his testimony: the timing of the trip, the reason for his unusual behavior early in the morning, and the details of the pickup truck's departure. On the 15th of August, under pressure from test results and mounting evidence, Chris Watts admitted to killing his wife but tried to justify it by saying he only did it because Shannon killed her 2 daughters. However, that story was quickly disproved by forensic evidence and his own eventual confession. Soon after, Chris changed his entire story and confessed. He had killed all 3 of them, deliberately, planning and carrying them out on the same morning.
She freaked out over the separation all the time. I think she laid back down, but that's when I went downstairs, but I heard like a little commotion upstairs, but I didn't think anything of it.
And then you went back upstairs and she was...
Never. I could see like she was on top.
choking her, or did she kill her?
They're blue.
Both of them?
Yes.
She choked both of them to death.
I freaked out at the same thing with her.
The investigation then shifted no longer to finding missing people, but to finding bodies and prosecuting a chillingly brutal crime. After Chris's confession, the police quickly expanded their search. Just days later, they discovered Shannon's body buried in shallow soil at an oil field where Chris had worked. Not far from the site, 2 industrial oil tanks revealed something even more horrifying. Bella and Celeste's bodies were packed into 20-foot-high drums, their bodies heavily contaminated with oil. Autopsies showed that Shannon died from manual strangulation. Both girls died from asphyxiation, with obvious signs of strangulation and injuries to their throats. The victims were killed intentionally, not in a fit of rage. The case file was filled with physical evidence, forensics, testimony, and camera footage, all pointing to Chris Watts as a cold-blooded killer who brutally, deliberately, and without remorse ended the lives of his wife and 2 children. In November 2018, Chris Watts was formally indicted on 9 felony charges, including 3 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of unlawful abortion, and charges of concealing a body and tampering with a crime scene. In court, Chris did not argue, nor did he ask for a trial. He pleaded guilty in silence, a silence as terrifying as the way he ended the lives of 3 innocent people in his family. On the 19th of November, 2018, Chris Watts appeared in court in Weld County, Colorado, for his sentencing. Throughout the hearing, he remained stony-faced, barely showing any emotion. There were no tears, no sincere apologies. Chris stood before Shannon's family, who had just lost their daughter and their granddaughter, but showed no remorse. The defense attorney did not present any arguments regarding mental illness or mitigating circumstances. All statements were brief, like the defendant's icy silence. There were no surprises in court. No moments of crying or pleading, just the emptiness of a man who had taken the lives of his entire family. Chris Watts was sentenced to 5 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole, plus 48 years for the illegal abortion and 36 years for concealing a body.
So the court is going to sentence Mr. Watts as follows. With regard to count number 1, murder in the first degree as it relates to Shannon Watts, the court is going to sentence you, sir, to a life sentence in the Colorado Department of Corrections, followed, with no possibility of parole. And that is going to run consecutively to all but counts 3 and 4. With regard to count 2, as it relates to murder in the first degree with Bella, the court is going to sentence you to life in the Colorado Department of Corrections with no possibility of parole. With regard to count number 3, the court is going to sentence you as it relates to Celeste to life in the Colorado Department of Corrections with no possibility of parole. With regard to counts 4 and 5 relating to Bella and Celeste as a different theory of first-degree murder, the court is going to sentence you to life in the Colorado Department of Corrections, and legally those sentences must run concurrently as a different theory of first-degree murder.
The American public followed the trial closely and largely agreed that the sentence was necessary. No one could understand the motive of a husband and father who would choose to kill his entire family in pursuit of an affair. Many believed that Chris deserved the death penalty. But because he had agreed to plead guilty to avoid the maximum sentence, he was given the maximum sentence under the current law. The Chris Watts case is a classic tragedy in the age of social media, where pretty pictures can hide quiet cracks underneath. Shanann believed she was living in a happy family, but she had no idea she was drifting toward the abyss. An extramarital affair, prolonged silence, and a chilling, selfish mentality led to an irreparable tragedy. What do you think of Chris Watts' sentence? Is life in prison really a fitting punishment for someone who destroyed his entire family for a momentary passion? Leave your thoughts in the comments below because you, the loyal followers, are the clearest voice for justice. And don't forget, subscribe to our channel to continue to clarify the most heartbreaking, haunting, and shocking cases in contemporary history.